Welcome. You're listening to How I Did That, a storytelling podcast. Let's jump into today's episode.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? It's been so long.
Okay, hi. Wait, does it matter what person I speak in? So I
No,
feel
it
like hi
doesn't
everyone.
matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Give it space to. Hi everyone. My name is Rosana Alvarez. I am a current graduate from Wayne State. I graduated with a communication sciences and disorders degree, and right now I have just been applying to grad programs. I'm kind of conflicted. I don't know if I want to go into speech language pathology or be a behavioral analyst, and that would be under the School of Education.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm honored to have you be my guest.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your background. Like in high school, did you know this was the field you wanted to choose? What were your interests at that time? Yeah.
Okay, so I guess background, I was born and raised in Southwest Detroit, and for college, I didn't really leave that far. I literally went downtown. But I am a Detroit public school alum as well, and absolutely not. I did not think that this was a career I was going to go into. I didn't even know it existed, but I feel like that's what makes me love it so much, is because I want to work with children who have special needs, and I didn't see that in my school system, and it could have been obviously it's because of lack of funding. But I know I would meet people and they would be like, oh, I had a speech pathologist, and when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, and I was like, we didn't even have that option. And I think that's also a problem in the Latinx community. So and it's also, again, it could be because people just don't know that there's resources to help your kids if they are special needs or if they need resources. So that's why I'm really excited to go into this field, because I could definitely bring this to my community.
Oh, that's amazing. So what did you plan on doing in college before you had heard about this?
So I was pre-nursing. I came into everybody, I was going to be a nurse, and I was so excited. And I went on a trip to the Dominican Republic where I was it was a medical relief trip with Wayne, and I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. I was whoa, everyone needs healthcare. I felt it really in my heart, but I was but I don't think that I felt it because of I loved nursing. It was more of I felt it because I loved community. I loved being with the people and learning about their culture, and then realizing yo, they need help. So then I literally had I feel everyone has this in college where you're what am I doing with my life? And when I had that moment, I was hey, I know I want to work with children. So that was always a thing for me. I do not want to be in an adult corporate setting or anything like that. I want to work with children. And I just started Googling and asking my friends, what's a good major, and speech pathology, communication sciences and disorders came up. And then coincidentally around that time, my friend was hey, they're hiring at this autism center to work with children. And I just applied, and then that's where I got hands-on working with kids who are under a spectrum. And that's when I knew I need to do this forever. This is what I want to do.
When you said you were pre-nursing, did you just think about doing nursing, or you had actually started taking your nursing courses in your undergrad?
100%. I was taking, I was in bio, I took chem. I only got to intro levels when it came to the nursing requirements.
Exam.
Yeah, you literally helped me pass chem. I would not have passed chem if it wasn't for you.
So funny.
But yeah, I took all the intro classes, and the thing with the communication and disorders is that we take similar classes, but we'll take them as a cohort instead of with everyone else. So every other pre-med kid, pre-dental, everybody else is taking all the science classes together, but we take them at our own pace. So yeah, I definitely started, and it was actually a hard transition, because when I started taking the classes, I had all my friends in all these pre-med classes. There's a lot of people that I knew. I met a lot of people, and then when I switched over, since it was such a small group of people, I feel I didn't really click with a lot of people. So it was definitely hard for me to find resources in the program. I still think that like it's a newer program at Wayne. I still felt like there's like a lot of things, like for instance, like I was one of the few people of color in like all my classes, which is very common, right? But in communication sciences and disorders, there's literally like maybe 2 of us. And so it was like, that was also really hard for me. I was like, maybe I don't belong here. I don't know. It was like a lot to like take in, but.
Wait, how many years did you take nursing classes for before you switched?
2.
Oh, 2 years. And then
2 years, yeah.
Did any of your courses like transfer over?
So a lot of the science ones, like I was able to like use them. But for the most part, no, it was like a blank slate. Like I had to start over, which was why I was so hesitant to change, because it added a whole year. Like I graduated as a 5th year instead of a 4th year, because I decided to change my major. And that's like, yeah, it like definitely, if there's like some huge advice I give is like to kind of not set timelines for yourself, because it really like gets to you when like you're not meeting it or when life doesn't work out a certain way. So that's what happened to me when I switched over.
But you're probably glad you made the switch, right? Rather than like pushing yourself to complete 4 years of nursing and then being like, I don't want this.
Right. And I was so scared to tell my parents. I was like, they're gonna be really mad that I'm switching over. Like they're gonna think that I couldn't do it in nursing. And I'm like, no, look, I could. It's just that it just wasn't for me. And I still think it's like a beautiful profession, but like it just wasn't for me.
Okay. And when you switched over, like was this like normally this would have been a 4-year degree?
Correct.
Speech. Okay. And then can you just walk us a bit through like what you did when you got involved with this program when you switched over? Like what? First, I wanted to talk about the undergraduate curriculum for people who might be interested in this field. What kind of courses do you take?
So you'll take like anatomy and physiology. You'll take there's like. But again, it's not with everyone else. It's like with the program. You take classes like audiology, which is like a lot of physics and like your ears and sound waves. It's all fun. Phonetics. Let me think. And then like language development classes. So it's like a mixture of science and then like language development and then you take the intro classes, and it's really rigorous in the sense of you're only allowed to have 2 Bs, and they can be B minuses. Your GPA can't drop from a 3.0 or like when you're taking this intro classes. And then once you finish all of them, your advisor has to like approve them. And then that's when you could take like the part 2 of every class. And that includes like all your clinicals, and then like literally the same class, but kind of like more advanced. But yeah.
But why do you think it was so rigorous? Was it just because it was a new program at Wayne? Oh, and when did they start this program? How many, like, which cohort are you in?
Okay, so I have no idea what cohort I'm in, but it is like relatively new. That's like the faculty and everybody else they have not been there for a long time. Oh, what was your other question? What was I thinking? Oh, why is it so rigorous? Yeah, why is it so rigorous? Okay, I actually want to ask that question all the time. I never ask my advisor, like, hey, why is it like so hard for people to like stay in this program? Because I know a lot of people start and then obviously they don't hit the 3.0, or they get that B minus and like they have to retake a class, and you're like, why would I have to retake a class if I didn't fail it? So I know a lot of people leave the program. And I think recently it has been discussed because they have like a problem where they like the retention rate for people of color is really low. And I think it's because of that, because they don't really like offer a lot of support or anything like that. But it's still a really good program. It just has a lot of room to like grow.
Okay. Does nursing have the same requirements? Like you need to maintain all of these, or is the program you're in now more rigorous than nursing?
I would say nursing school is really hard to get into. So like you could get whatever GPA, but that GPA matters as well. Like you need to be really competitive, but that doesn't stop you from taking a class. Like if you get a C in bio, you can still take the next bio because you passed it. Whereas like in SLP, like you can't get a C. Your advisor will not approve you coming over.
Oh, I see. Interesting. So I don't know, I guess just maybe because I'm more exposed to nursing and people are always like, oh my God, nursing is so difficult. Like all the undergrads that I've talked to, that I would expect that to be like one of the harder like science, biology related majors. Now that you mentioned it, I never would have thought that it would be like so rigorous. So that's interesting to know because
I was the same. I was like, why is this so rigorous? And then I think another thing is like a lot of SLP programs, there's like, it's like grad school at the end of the day. So you take your 4 years and then you go to grad school for 2 years, unless you're like in an accelerator program. But
like most people doing the undergrad will always go on to grad school.
Yeah, it's like because of this rigorous requirements and everything, like there's kind of no reason for you not to get into a grad school program. So I guess that's the perk of it being like rigorous. It's where like you're not having like well, my GPA isn't good, I wonder if I'm going to get accepted. It's more of like well, they prepared me. Now it's just up to me.
Do most people go on to do a master's, like, or are you able to work with your undergrad degree?
Yeah, so you're not able to work with your undergrad degree. So it's like people usually graduate and they're already applying to programs because you definitely need the 2 years to be working either in like a school setting or like a hospital setting, whatever you want to like go into. They won't take you if you're not. You could be an assistant and they get paid pretty well, but it's not like the real deal.
Is this just because like you're working with kids directly and they want you to have hands-on experience in like a setting? Okay.
So yeah, you're like, and people like, there's like, you could own your own practice right after you get your master's, and like, it's like there's like a lot of room to grow. So it's kind of like a doctor, right? Like they could own their own practices, they could work in hospitals. It's like,
oh, I see. Do you guys take psychology, anthropology, or anything like mind related otherwise?
We take psychology classes, like developmental psychology and like intro to psych.
I wanted to ask you a bit more about the program itself. Because you did say that people who have their undergrad can't work, right? You need your master's. But once you have your master's, like, what are the options? What kind of settings can you work in? What can you do with it?
Okay, so there's like two like major settings. So it's like the medical setting, and that's like working with kids who, let's say, I don't know, you had so it's with kids. It's not just with kids. So this degree, like I keep saying kids, but that's just because that's what I want to go into. Okay. But you work with like stroke patients who lost their ability to speak, their ability to eat, and then you could also work with kids who, like, really sad case, but like if a kid had like a brain tumor or something and he's losing his ability to speak or eat, like doing therapy and like, you know, kind of like working with the family to do that and then like fix a problem. That's usually what happens in like the medical setting. And then in school systems, SLPs usually are the ones who work with kids who have like stutters and lisps and like developmental problems when it comes to language.
Oh, I see. So when you were in your undergrad, what kind of hands-on experience were you able to get so far in your like career field?
So I work for, like I said, an autism center. And we work alongside, so I work with BCBAs who are behavioral analysts, which is something I'm also kind of interested in doing, so I am going to apply to grad programs. But they work with kids under the spectrum, and they work on language and they work on behaviors. And a lot of the language, I was able to like see these kids, so they would come in after just meeting with their SLPs. I actually had a coworker who was an SLP, like she was in her grad program, and she was like a huge, like she gave me all her books, and she was like really great. And a lot of my coworkers were actually like SLP grad students, so that really like gave me a lot of like exposure in the sense of my peers, and then working with the kids. So even though I'm not an SLP, we do a lot of language programs with the kids, and like kids with autism usually have like they're definitely a couple years behind than they should be. So we work a lot with that, and I'm able to have that exposure with literally the kids at work, which like is another reassurance that I do want to do this. Like this is for me.
That's awesome. Let's talk a bit about like what organizations, what extracurriculars did you get involved in while you were in school?
So With extracurriculars, I feel like I divide them in like community orgs. So these are like Detroit orgs or Southwest Detroit programs. And then the ones I did on campus. But at the end of the day, they all end up coming together, I feel, because school orgs always try to help out the community. So on Wayne's campus, I was in Greek life. I am a part of Sigma Lambda Gamma sorority, so that's awesome. And then I also was one of the founders of the Latinx Student Association at Wayne State. So those two were like, they took up most of my time at Wayne State. And then in the community, I am a part of Congress of Communities, which is literally like a youth-driven, well, it's not only youth-driven, but I was more into like the youth side of it, where it's basically like you advocate for literally all causes and things that are important to us. And that org actually was the reason why I wanted, like, I always stayed active and like always did a lot while in undergrad, because they like really made me believe like, hey, like I'm from Detroit, I have a voice. That was the number one thing they like taught me, like you have a voice. And so that's how I became like involved in like everything.
For you specifically, how were you able to help out like the Metro Detroit area?
What played a big role was coming from the community. So I didn't start my community orgs like in college. I was already a part of them. I was like a product of them. Like I was like one of the kids like that they sent off to college. So it's really hard not to help out like other generations and like want to be like a supportive alum. So I feel like I was really comfortable with Detroit because I'm from Detroit. So I knew which orgs I wanted to join. I knew which causes were important to me. And yeah, it's really fun. Like one of the bigger projects that we did with COC was like called Nuestro Futuro. And it's literally like a monthly session of helping kids with like college applications, mental health services, things that are sadly like a luxury in our communities, and like nobody really emphasizes the importance of them. So it's nice like to be someone to like help someone with an essay or help someone feel as if like they could get to like the places that we're getting to.
When you were able to help out, like was it through all three of the different organizations you were involved in? All three of them kind of gave back to the community, had different events?
For sure. I was the community chair in the Latinx Council, so that I obviously picked that chair because I like had a lot of connections in my specific community and like overall the Detroit community. So I combined that like immediately, and then with my sorority, like a lot of the members or like my sisters were all like from Detroit or were like from communities that need help. So we like everyone was down to go like to Detroit to like do community service. So yeah, they all intertwined. I feel like when you find out what you like, and like you get these leadership roles, you're like, okay, like I'm pretty sure these people are also gonna like helping out the community, and so it's like an army of people.
That's so good, because you mentioned you were the president of one of the, was it the Latinx Council you were the president of?
I stayed as community outreach chair the whole time I was there, and then I was president of my sorority. Yeah.
Because when you moved to president, like what kind of initiatives were you able to implement that, or like the changes that you were able to implement that you didn't see implemented when you were just a member?
So I create leadership roles. They're so fun in the works, and it's basically because I like making agendas. I like organizing. I like being like someone who has a voice in like event planning, and I like working on like on a team. So that's always why I always like seek these roles, or try to be in like really involved in an org. So it does make a big difference in the sense of, okay, well now I have this responsibility and people expect me to do this, and I still have to go to my classes, I still have to do my homework, I still have to do everything. So it really makes you so busy, but you're like a productive busy. So that really like made me realize like, yo, I could do this in a job. I could be really organized and still do my work and still do what I love.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of them have to be with like the space we provide. So at the end of the day, it's like a woman empowerment org. We're not your stereotypical TV sorority or anything like that. Like we really do like emphasize like women empowerment Oh, go ahead.
What's the difference between fraternity and sorority? Because I just said fraternity, then you said sorority.
That's funny. Oh, so fraternity is the guys, and then sorority is the girls.
I'm never involved in one of these. Okay.
Yeah. So it was, to me, I think it was like probably the strongest support system I had in undergrad, and it's literally like a woman empowerment group where like you have like everyone's your friend, and you are able to like help others with their homework or like little things like that, right? So you start from the bottom, like how you can like help each other, but then like it's your org, you could kind of do whatever you want in the sense of like, well, we think this is important, this is an important issue, let's target this, let's do this, let's see how we could help each other like this.
Like, were you able to get funding? And like
we had to do everything when it came to funding, so we did a lot of fundraising.
Wow. And then you were able to use that fundraising to go back and like help the community.
Right. Or exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Was there any like specific event that you were able to manage that really gave back to the community that kind of sticks in your mind?
Let me think.
Or one of your favorite events, or one that you like wish you could do more often?
This doesn't have to do with like Greek life or anything like that, but I think one of the most important, like a really important event I did on Wayne's campus is definitely I worked for Upward Bound, which is like it's like a program where it's for like marginalized kids from marginalized communities, and I was like a kind of like a camp counselor, but it was at Wayne State. I was like an RA, and I was there for 2 weeks with them, and obviously it's a really long time to spend with high school kids, but I really learned a lot about how like they want these opportunities, they just don't know how to get to them because they don't have the resources, and so being that resource was like awesome. And I remember like after I finished the program, one of the kids like reached out to me, and I like helped him write his letters. I helped him write his FAFSA, and I'm like, hey, like if I wouldn't have done this, like I wouldn't have been able to be there for you, and like it was just like really impactful.
Especially for younger students, were these high school students?
They were high school students, yeah.
Yeah, because for younger students, they don't really have the resources available, like unless someone from their family might be in that field or might have recently gone to college. Because colleges are constantly changing their requirements and their applications and like the processes. So unless you like, even when I applied for like not FAFSA, but it's OSAP in Canada, it's like the financial aid, the process changed from when I applied to when my sister applied. This was only 3 years apart. Guidance counselors at your school, like if your school has really good resources, I don't know, aside from that, like as a freshman, you don't really, or as a high school student, you don't have too many connections to be able to help you with that transition.
That's like literally why I flex so much that I'm like a first generation graduate, because like we are not exposed to any of these resources. We literally have to find them ourselves. And like it's not that our parents don't want to help us, it's just that they just don't know. And we always had to do all these things since we were little, so now that like we actually did it, or like you said, like you figured all that out by yourself, obviously, so that just makes like a big difference. Like I don't know, a lot of kids literally have, like I know someone who when they were in high school they had someone with them that would teach them stocks. Like their school would assign them to a person to teach them how to invest, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way, we did not have that growing up.
That's so important, like just small things that can really help change somebody's life. That's really important. Scholarships or other things that you like a student may not even apply to because they don't even know it's there, or like scholarships for people of color, scholarships for women in STEM, things like that. I know for sure there were things that I missed out on just because I didn't even know they were available to me, and then I heard things after I heard about these loopholes or other things after I graduated, and I'm like, oh great, I could have.
I think that's also important because Wayne State has like a 30% retention rate, and if you look at every other school, it's like 90%. Like we have a really low graduation rate, but you see it. Like I remember a lot of my friends who I started with, like they didn't graduate, and it's because they might have not felt like connected to like their majors or like the school or anything. But it's like sad, like that our school has like such a low graduation rate.
Wayne State did make college tuition free for students in Detroit recently. Do you have any comments on that?
That's beautiful. I think I'm sad that we didn't get on with that because I want to say it's for Detroit residents. So I definitely would have qualified, but I'm so happy. I know that a lot of my hardships in undergrad were money based, and a lot of times where I couldn't, register for a class, or like I was like really focusing all my attention on, well, how am I going to pay my next semester? So that was like probably like top 5 stressors in undergrad, and I'm so happy that like future generations do not have to go through that, because no one deserves to go through that.
Sure.
And then I like found out it also works for kids who are like are undocumented, and like they're not like, yeah, so I'm like, okay, this is beautiful. Wayne State, and I want to say they're the only school in Michigan doing that, so that's also
That's good. That's good. I mean, Wayne State isn't in an underprivileged area as well. Like the University of Michigan is like in a more luxurious area, and other universities.
For sure.
That was really great, because I heard about this, like, I think it was a year after I had graduated, or maybe it was that same year, because this was just last year.
Yeah. So these incoming freshmen like are going to be the first ones to have it.
I wish that they would do this with people who are also currently in school. I mean, students would definitely appreciate like having free tuition. I know people just drop out of college because they can't afford to pay for the next semester. They have to work for a semester and then gather up the money to go back. And that just throws you off, because for some programs, classes are only offered once a year, because it's such
exactly.
You mentioned that there were like gaps in the program, like there were not a lot of people of color, and there were other things. What changes do you hope to see implemented in this SPL program?
So I actually saw that one of my friends posted, like, so there's this org for kids like in SLP, and they were, one of like the head people was saying like, our program is primarily white, and that's like a problem. And so there, I want to say like it's a lot of like calling people out, but at the same time finding ways to make this more accessible. Like, you don't hear about SLP. Like, every time I would tell someone I was an SLP, they'll be like, what is that?
Right.
So definitely like there needs to be like a lot more awareness and a lot more support while in the program, so you feel like you belong.
I think that's a good point, because you mentioned earlier, like, you didn't even know that this existed when you were in high school, but then you talked to people from other schools and they were like, yeah, we had a speech pathologist in high school.
Right.
That's maybe due to lack of funding, your high school didn't have that. In university, a lot of students don't even know that this is a field. Probably links back to the fact that, like,
there's a lot.
Even if you have lack of funding or you don't have those resources, you don't get access to those things you don't get access to those resources, I guess. While in high school, you never hear about these things, and then that kind of just goes back to college, where you don't even know it's a field because you were never exposed to it. If that makes sense, go hand in hand. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also a program that's not in a lot of campuses. Like, I know I always wanted to go to the University of Michigan, and I was like, I can't wait to apply to grad school there. And there's not a lot of schools in Michigan that have SLP programs, like grad school level or undergrad. I want to say like the most popular schools that have that program are like Michigan State and like Wayne State, and then you have to drive super far up, and that's when like where all the other schools are. So it's not huge in a lot of places.
Oh, I see. And like, when you're applying to grad schools right now, which schools are you targeting?
So I am pulling a couple risky out of state just to see my options. But I think I'm really looking into Wayne's program. That's like number one for me. Do
you have they integrated it really well with their undergrad? It's like the transition.
Correct. And it's really picky. Like, they're really picky on who they accept. But I have a couple friends who have gotten accepted, and they really like it. So it's the same professors, or a lot of the same professors. And so I feel like it'll be really comfortable for me.
What do you hope that the master's program is going to be like, or what do you expect?
So I expect it to be obviously like very clinical based, like working on site. I don't know if like they start working in schools or like hospitals right away, but I know that that's what that's what I'm excited for. Yeah, so I expect it to be very hands-on for sure, because undergrad it was not super hands-on, and so I expect the program to be very much like we are writing our own treatment plans and everything like that, which is what I feel like I need. Because, like, yes, I did have coworkers who were in this program, but having literally like the pressure of like, okay, I'm gonna impact someone's life, like, let me make sure I'm doing this right, is like what excites me.
having an impact on somebody's life is a really big gift, like being able to be, yeah. And for people in the SPL undergraduate program, what kind of resources did they have available to be able, like, I guess, to connect them to when they had to apply to universities, or when you're in your master's, like being able to work in industry, like, or even when you're in undergrad, being able to do a co-op or an internship? Like, were there any resources for students to be able to get any hands-on experience?
There was, for sure. A lot of people worked in the ABA spectrum, which is like what I do, like with like the behavioral side. So a lot of my coworkers did that. And then you could always intern for SLPs. I know that in a lot of hospitals, they take them all the time, and like private practices. A lot of it is like who you know. A lot of people in my classes were like interning for like a family friend who was an SLP, which is like, if you don't know a lot of SLPs, that might be harder for you. But yeah, I think that was like the two sides. So it's either like you apply to these programs or you work with children.
Okay, so Wayne State didn't really have those resources, but it was more like if you knew somebody, you could get a position somewhere.
Yeah. Or if you probably asked like our advisor, like she would be like awesome with that. But they weren't like in your face, no. Like it was actually kind of hard to like find them.
You had to kind of, because I know for like engineering or some other fields, they do have like the career fairs, right, where recruiters will come to try to like, you can go to the career fairs, you can talk to recruiters, try to get a co-op or an internship there at any of the companies. And sometimes they hire you full time, but I wasn't sure how it worked with a smaller program like SLP. Like, I'm sure they don't have like a ton. Well, I mean, I've never heard of it, but do they have anything like a recruiting fair for like universities? You come and like give them your information for your
no, I think a lot of it is like you going to like orientations and like actually putting yourself out there. But I know it's like completely, like, for instance, like I know for engineering, you guys have to like your resume has to be like, I did all of these internships, and like internships matter a lot. And for us, it's more of like, well, once you get into grad school, like you're not guaranteed a job, obviously, but like you are, like, once you become like licensed and everything, then like it's pretty, like you're probably gonna get hired.
Right. That's good. And how big was your cohort?
It was tiny, dude. I don't know numbers, but I know our list was not long. Yeah, the program itself is really small.
So like 15 people?
Probably like 50.
15 people.
50 to 100. Yeah, that's like a big gap, but
50. I said 15. I was like, okay,
yeah, no.
50 people.
Yeah, I think my average class size was no more than 40 to 50.
Oh, okay.
Like throughout every single class. So some classes had less. So I think like max like 50 people per class.
Yeah. I think that was really we covered most of what I wanted to ask you about your journey, but was there, I guess, actually two things. First, where would you like to see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? In terms of
a beautiful question.
Actually, in terms of like your career, as well as like community involvement, if you're still in Detroit, how would you like to take your leadership positions, with different organizations in Detroit and be able to make a change in the community? I guess is what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense.
No, you make perfect sense. Okay. So I feel like a reason why I also want to stay in Detroit is because I owe Detroit so much, in the sense of like my community orgs are the reasons what I feel is like the main reason why I was like able to get through undergrad. I was able to have resources. So I know that like now that I do have more free time, I am definitely going to be more involved in my community in the sense of like a resource to others. And then like just seeing how I could help. So I see myself being very community driven because I feel like I owe it to my community and I love doing it. And then when it comes to my career, so like remember I said I am kind of having like, I don't know if I want to go in directly into SLP or maybe get like a behavioral analysis degree with the School of Education. But in 5 to 10 years, I hope to be working in probably a medical setting. I see myself more in the medical setting. I'm not shying away from education. I would definitely like also like to dabble in there. Hopefully with yeah, like I want to be working in Detroit. That's a big thing. Because I want to be that resource to like the kids who didn't, or the parents and the children who aren't aware that their children are having neurological problems, or like, and they have like disorders. Like, I really want to be that voice to like my Latinx community, because the Spanish community is not very aware of, like, they don't take it seriously, or they just don't know, you know. So I want to be there like for them, and so I see myself working in Detroit with my community, advocating for children with like disorders.
Wow, what a beautiful message.
Yeah.
Was there any like parting message that you would like to give to everybody, or as well as, I guess, well, let me rephrase that. So what parting message would you give to students wanting to get into your career field?
Like in a lot of careers, I feel, especially for like people of color, I think that like imposter syndrome is such a serious thing, where you feel like you don't belong in a career, and you feel like it might not be for you because you don't see people who look like you in that career. And so like partying, I would always say that don't let that be the limiting factor, and don't let like your classmates intimidate you, that you are like deserving of, like, you're deserving to be an SLP or an engineer or anything you want to be, because like our parents worked really hard like to get us here. We worked really hard, and so it's really not impossible. And then like my favorite word in the world, but like really do use all your resources, because there's a lot, and it's like harder for us to look for them, but they're there. So like don't ever like give up on that either.
A lot of these communities, or a lot of schools, like they don't have access to many of the resources that like more upscale communities would have. They do have access to like a limited number of resources, and they do have to look harder to find them, but you're right, they're there, and they can try to take advantage of what they have at least, to be able to like build off that and get to a better place.
Exactly.
And that's great that you're able to, you want to work here, and you want to, you know, help and give back to the community that you were raised in. I think that is a beautiful message. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. It was so nice being on this. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm honored.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into today's episode, and we'll see you next time.